Hello, everybody. Welcome to Promo Perspectives Live. It's a new podcast brought to you by Sage. We live stream it once a month with the goal of giving promotional products distributors tips and tricks and perspectives on how to grow their business. Today, I am so pleased to be joined by Josh Ellis, publisher and editor-in-chief from PPAI. We're going to be discussing the new Greatest Companies to Work For article that PPAI published earlier this week. Talk about company culture, what makes a great company, and what it takes to make the list. Thank you so much for joining me, Josh.
Gabe, I know I was a difficult booking, but I'm kidding. It's actually, I like the show, so I'm glad to be here. You're doing cool stuff.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad our people were able to get together and make this happen.
That's right.
Why don't you go, before we get into the main topic, kind of tell the audience a little bit about yourself, your role at PPAI.
Yeah, so I oversee our media. I've been with PPAI almost 3 years, and the department has really grown and flourished with some great support from our board and feedback from the members. We started really with just editorial publications. We did a magazine and we had a newsletter. We got the news out. But the board, based on PPAI's mission to be the voice of the industry, really saw some potential for the media department. And so we've taken a more aggressive tack toward news and editorial, but we've also added research to the fold, most recently governmental affairs, digital content, social media. So the team has grown a lot and is doing great work, and really proud of what we've done.
Well, I've definitely seen a lot of great things coming out of PPAI. And as far as the way that it helps purport your mission, let's talk about the Greatest Companies article in particular. And in what ways does the Greatest Company article help with that mission?
Yeah, so to go back to the board one more time, they are, of course, made up of representatives from the industry. And so everything that PPAI sets as a goal is truly for the good of the industry. And one of our strategic goals is economic sustainability and scalability. And that's not just for PPAI itself to be able to stand on its own 2 feet, but it's also for the people whose businesses make up the promotional products marketplace. And so one of the things for economic sustainability and scalability that you have to have is a strong staff. And it is absolutely in the mission of PPAI for the people who are going to carry on this industry forward to have the understanding of what makes a great culture, so that people will want to come work there and want to stay working there at those businesses and get better, learn the market more intimately, and do great work for their clients. And this is not spelled out precisely in the organizational charter or whatever, but for me personally, I think the list is important because there's some movement of personnel in this industry, right? It's really common for whether it's distributors going to work for one or the other, or supplier personnel, people come and go. They get in the promotional products industry and they're lifers, right? Well, if they are going to change jobs, I like the idea that they're using our list to vet their potential employers, to know what they're actually getting for themselves. So I think it supports not only the businesses, but the employees. It's a really important list for us.
Raising up the industry, it's the rising tide raises all ships, right?
Absolutely. And there's some competition for it too. Companies, and we discovered this with PPAI 100, our other primary list that I don't know that we thought about going in, but it is really a feather in the cap for marketing for these companies to be able to say on PPAI 100, we're one of the leading distributors or suppliers in the industry. Or for Greatest Companies to Work For, they're all competing locally for a talent force, or nationally, now that more companies have people working remotely. You need to be able to say those things. You need to be able to back up that your culture is strong, and if somebody comes to work for you, they're not going to hate it.
How has that list, or I guess let's start with, what are some of the kind of key factors that go into making the list in the first place?
Yeah, so the way it's the way Greatest Companies to Work For is structured is you have to be nominated by an employee, though the companies will then give us their roster of all their talent, we'll send them a survey, 15-question survey. It's been the same questions since the list was first created in 2011. And some of the factors, I won't go through the all 15, but it's as simple as I'm confident about my future at this company. I'm paid fairly for the work I do. I get recognition and praise for doing my job well. Things that are generally accepted by any employee or employer as pretty vital for them to love where they work. And so we score each company on all of those questions, and from a 1 to 5 scale. 1 is I strongly agree with this positive statement, and 5 is I strongly disagree. And you see the cream rising to the top. You see some companies that do it better than others in this category or that category. Nobody's perfect, right? But it's a pretty comprehensive measure of, we think, of what makes a great place to work.
You say the questions have been the same now for over 10 years. But how has the actual definition of a great place to work changed in that time?
That's a great question. So I'll give you the one about work-life balance, for example. The question is, I'm given the flexibility to manage my work and personal life. Different people, maybe pre-pandemic, would have defined that differently. So I remember in 2019 and the first 2.5 months of 2020, work-life balance to me meant that I work from 8:30 to 5:30 or 9 to 6, and then I'm able to kind of unplug in the evening or on the weekends. And a lot of people were that was probably closer to their definition then. We weren't, even though we were carrying around potentially work in our phones, most of us were not blending work and life to the extent that we do now, that we're all more used to working from home. And work-life balance to me now is a totally different definition. I'm okay doing some things at night or on the weekends. Maybe not all weekend, maybe not all night, but I am happier to marry those two together because I'm not commuting to the office every day. PPAI is on a hybrid schedule, and so the office 3 days a week is my house. And that also, if I'm willing to do those things in the evening or on the weekends, then I'm going to ask the boss to let me take a doctor's appointment at 9, because that's when I can get in, or let me do lunch at my kid's school, things like that. And so I really think that that's a great one as far as what evolution has been over time. And it's a personal definition and not the same for everybody, but it does happen. But I still think that the factors are all, even though they're going on 15 years old, they're pretty eternal, right? Employees want to be paid well, whether it's 2011 or 2024. These things are going to be probably with us for the long haul.
Well, and you talk about like the flexibility of remote or hybrid work, and obviously that is kind of the big topic now in the last couple of years since the pandemic, and it's not everything, so it's not all we're going to talk about, but I do kind of want to ask about that a little more in particular. So you mentioned like being on some of these lists is great for the marketing department or the recruitment department of a company, to be a PPAI top 100 or a greatest company to work for. Offering that kind of flexibility of remote or hybrid work is also one of those feathers in the cap these days, right? Like, what role does that take in being competitive to getting top talent?
I think if you want the better millennial employees, Gen Z employees, it's become a must-have to a certain extent. We all frankly got used to things over the course of 2020 and 2021. I didn't want to go back to the office. I don't, even though I enjoy the work and I enjoy my coworkers, I don't like driving in. For me, it's like a 50-minute commute, and that stinks. I don't want to do that, even though there's great podcasts to listen to, Gabe. I think that's pretty universal among this generation. And as time goes on, this generation, the next generation, is only a bigger and bigger part of the workforce. right already they make up the biggest share. And they are, in fact, the leaders that you should be developing in your companies. And so if you're old school, I understand why the opportunity for collaboration when people are working together in the office is very real. And there are ways that it's much easier done in person than via Teams or Google Meets or whatever. But I just think that you need to offer both if you can. Obviously, in this industry, there are some roles where it just will never make sense to be able to work from home, and so I wouldn't say it's a one size fits all for everybody. But there is competition for talent, and that has always been the case, and it always will be the case. And so I think that you've got to strongly consider it if it's not already your policy.
Right, and like you said, there's some roles that just it doesn't work out for. You and I with PPAI and Sage, we're a little more laptop bound than maybe some of these people who are embroidering or decorating or making physical products.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I understand there's some roles that it will just never get to work from home. I understand why, but there are other opportunities that come from remote work as well. You can hire a team that isn't bound to a 10-mile radius of your facility then. And so in some cases that might allow you to hire more affordable employees. It might allow you to do work with partners overseas that the talent is just as good, but may come at a cheaper price. For a lot of distributors, that's something that they're exploring right now. And there's some solutions providers in the industry that are doing that. I just think when you're limited to who's willing to drive to my office, especially in different parts of the country, that could be a challenge for you. That could limit your growth.
I know it's true for us here in the Dallas Metroplex. I mean, some of our most talented people here at Sage, a producer of our podcast, I think is coming in from Rockwall. Our social media person comes in from Fort Worth. And if they had to come up here 5 days a week, I just don't know that we'd get it.
Yeah. And, I remember after the pandemic, there was a movement that productivity is down and inflation is up, and these CEOs are all going to make everybody come back in. And some companies have done that. And I think there's a long tail effect that you'll find on whether that was a good idea or not. The productivity of a company can be difficult to gauge, and you may see a short-term uptick that as talent leaves, it may not be as sustainable as you would hope.
Well, and we get to, like you said, we get to see how this is going to play out with some of these companies that are trying to bring people back, because a lot of them are huge companies, like some of the bigger tech Silicon Valley or Seattle-based companies that are, for them, they can almost afford to do this experiment and lose a couple of hundred people if they decide they don't want to do it. But this kind of gets into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is the sizes of the companies in the promo industry tend to be much, much smaller than those kinds of companies, and your list itself is broken into different size categories. So what role does the size of an organization play, not just into remote work, but company culture in general?
Yeah, those companies in the tech industry that you're talking about, they have to make up for it in other ways too. The Silicon Valley employee is paid a lot more than the one that you'd be hiring out of Louisiana to do the exact same job, right? So there are trade-offs that leadership has to make. In the industry, while the questions may be the same, the challenges are a little bit different. And for a small company, if you've only got 5 or 6 employees, and the smallest company on our list only has 5 employees, everybody needs to be a little bit of a jack of all trades. Because going back to the work-life balance issue, like sometimes somebody's kid's going to get sick and they're going to have to stay home. Well, we need to be able to make do without that person. so that four of us can refill their them while they're out, and so in that way training is really important. On the other hand, at a really large company, whether it's a Silicon Valley company or the largest companies on our list, we have some in the hundreds and one to over 1,200. You may have people in more specialized roles where they don't need to know everything, but in that case, they need to not feel like they're just a small fish in a big pond, right? They need to understand that there are some opportunities to grow and develop, because I can't be at this coordinator or mailroom level forever. If you want me to stay, if I'm good, then you have to create the leadership development opportunities to put those people on a path to promotions and things like that. So there's different challenges at different size companies, but this is why leadership is a thing that so many of us study. Myself and a lot of the distributors who are listening to this right now is because it's just interesting, right? It's not easy anywhere because you're involving people and they're unpredictable, and also you owe it to them to give them the opportunity to thrive. So different challenges at different companies, but interesting challenge for the management anyway.
Absolutely. Well, something I liked about this year's list, which again is available now, came out earlier this week. So if you want to go take a look, it's on ppaa.org/media, right?
That's right.
This year, not only did you, because there's always an article that kind of explains some of the philosophy and thought behind it, and then there's a list. But this year you also include a lot of just kind of the company details and kind of bio information for these different companies, which I think is super useful because you can't just look at the score, see who made the company, and make some sudden drastic change in your own. But when you have this context of how all these different companies exist and operate in their different sizes, it gives you more ideas on how you can integrate some things into your own company culture.
The thing to me that stands out when you look at the 106 companies, and this is a record number for us this year, and I take that to mean that, frankly, more companies in the industry are taking the culture and the importance of a happy workforce seriously, and this is that feather in the cap for them. But when you look at the responses from all of them, I mean, you see some perks like, we got a pickleball court and we play in a volleyball league and things like that. But that's a one-off from this company or that company. And the thing that you see more as a sort of trend across all of them, large and small, is we've got a strong 401k. I like my dental insurance. I like my medical insurance. It's the relatively basic benefits that most people need. And if those are strong, then it's the pickleball court can come second. And so every company has their own HR situations to manage and navigate and find what's best for them. But it's obviously another thing that businesses, not just in the promotional products industry, but in your local area or nationally, compete on.
So, like we kind of talked about, people who are just reading this list can get a lot of great insights on ways to improve their own company culture. But for the people on the list themselves, it can be a great learning opportunity because, as I understand it, you provide them with a lot of information from the surveys. Yeah,
so this, I don't know that it was, when I arrived, it was really considered like a data gathering project, because it was really, again, the department was about publishing, and what we did is we would get the list and we would put it in the magazine, make the deadline, and that was great. It got attention and it was good for the companies. But now what excites me about the way that we've evolved the department and bringing in research is thinking about how we can use this information to make these companies better. So it's an anonymized survey, right? I'm not going to give away any individual employee's answers. That's very important to me and to PPAI. But we will be able to share the results for each company for all 15 questions, so that they can understand. We're good in this area. Let's keep it up. But maybe we do need to bump up our sort of pay ranges, things like that, because the employees are this is the thing that they said we were worst at, or tools. Do I have the right tools to do my job? Well, maybe we can invest in getting people the right software, things like that. Yes, we will be able to share that information, as well as individual employees. There's sort of an open-ended sort of essay response where you get even more information from them. And as long as their response doesn't give away who they are, then we feel like that's appropriate to share with management at the companies, so that they could do a better job. The employees will ultimately get hopefully something a little bit more toward the cultures that they enjoy. And in a lot of cases, it's just I love my boss. We're doing a great job as a team. And as managers, it's often a thankless role, right? And so you need that too. If you're the owner of a distributor, especially a small one, right? The typical industry distributor, just a few employees, you're working your butt off. And so being able to hear from the people that you're doing it with and for, that they're proud of what they do and believe in you, that makes all the difference for those people too. And so excited to be able to share all that stuff with everybody who participated.
Well, you're absolutely correct on it being thankless. So I just want to take a moment to say thank you to Rebecca Brown for being one of the best managers that I've ever had. So you mentioned that it was a record number of people on the list this year. And I'd noticed when I was kind of doing the research on previous year's list that it did grow every year. And I'm kind of curious about the philosophy behind not making it a top 10, top 100, and just letting it grow as big as it'll grow when people meet the benchmark.
Yeah, it comes with challenges to have this thing grow every year. I think in the magazine, we have like 36 pages devoted to this article this year. And so that might be the thing that we find a way to cut back on, is the print space, because it's a lot to manage. But I think that companies that are doing the right thing should be rewarded. And there would be a thin line between number 10 and number 11. And I don't want this list to be something that people lie to get on, or because their bonus is tied to inclusion on the list, things like that. I want this to serve a purpose, and the purpose being to make these workplace cultures better. And you can do that through recognizing companies that are doing it the right way. And so if you only have 5 employees, well, you can look at what other companies that make the list with only 5 employees are doing right. Or if you have 1,000 employees, you can look at those with 1,000, what they're doing, and kind of emulate some of the things that work well for them. Benchmarking is a big part of all of our research, and this is ultimately now a research project.
I assume, obviously, there were more than 106 people who had applied or had surveys filled out. Do you send feedback and results to the people that didn't make the list as well?
We do. So yeah, companies that didn't make the list for whatever reason, they're often it's that a small percentage of employees are really unhappy, and management knows to listen to those. But if most of your employees graded you a 1 or a 2, right? I agree, or I strongly agree with this positive statement. And, enough of them are just upset or have a valid beef, right? And graded you 4 or 5, then it skews that weighting quite a bit. And so that's usually the case when a company doesn't make it is you have some folks who are a minority of the workforce, right? But who are really unhappy, and you got to think about those people too, whether that can be a salvaged relationship or not, or what you need to do. Look yourself in the mirror. What you need to do from a management perspective to correct it, and then there are also cases where just the participation level in the surveys wasn't high enough. I think sometimes we're all sort of an over-surveyed culture. You can't pick up a Frosty from Wendy's without being asked to take a survey. And so people who aren't energized about what they're doing, they're probably just more apt to, archive that email. Or if they're busy, maybe you've got a workplace where people just have too much work to do. Well, something like my survey is not going to be top of the list, right? So those are the reasons why people wouldn't make it. Yes, we share the same feedback with them as well that was received from their employees.
So you talk about that small contingent of unhappy employees will tend to rate really negatively on these survey questions. Does that go both ways? Like, do you tend to see most responses are either overwhelmingly positive or overwhelmingly negative, or is there a fair amount of middle ground ranking going on too?
I would say most people have majority of their 15 responses are overwhelmingly one way or the other. And then there will be a couple of questions that are the other direction. Like, not every company's great at everything, and sometimes you have to make those trade-offs that I mentioned earlier of are we going to be a nimble culture, or are we going to have great collaboration, like agile versus collaboration, right? It's hard to do both. So you'll see both across companies and individually, usually, that there are people who see some gray area, but for the most part, they like their companies, and that's just a natural part of it, I think.
So, like we talked about, it's going to be different for every company, of every size, of every culture, but just generally speaking, maybe based on trends you've seen over the years or this year, if a company just sits down and asks the question, what can I do to make this list? Where do you suggest they start?
Do all the right things, right?
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's prioritize your people. We only ask that an employee nominates you, not that ownership nominates you. And so that employee could be in marketing or HR, and there are valid reasons why both departments would want the results. HR because they're going to get feedback on how their teams are feeling. Marketing because it's the opportunity to share some positivity about the company. But it's worth doing for anybody. I don't care if there's 206 companies next year, and it is more work for the team, but it's better for the people in the promotional products industry. We were talking at the beginning of the conversation about younger generations that are in the workforce, and you and I are in those younger generations, and I hope to stick around in this industry for the entirety of my career, right? And I want management to on behalf of my my peers, right, to understand the uniqueness of these people, and what challenges they have. They're coming of age. They want to buy a house. They have student loans that were through the roof compared to a generation before, maybe. And so, they want work-life balance, to have that family. They need to be paid fairly, or else they'll leave. And as an association on behalf of the industry, we need the best people to stay.
Well, we appreciate the list, and Josh, really, first of all, I appreciate you coming on the show today. And we really I know the industry is grateful for all of the resources that PPAI provides. And we got to wrap up here, but real quick, I just wanted to ask, this is a great list. You have the top 100. I've interviewed Colette about the social media list. Are there any other resources that you'd like to plug from PPAI that our audience might find useful?
Yeah, thank you. We talked a lot today about how this list is not just a publications thing anymore, right? This is data gathering. It's research, and that is a bigger and bigger part of what my team and PPAI is contributing to the industry, content and information, timely, accurate information. And where all that stuff is housed is on our premium research, ppai.org/premium-research, which is different than it used to be. It's a new website, right? But that research is only available to our professional tier members, the silver, gold, and platinum tier members, and those memberships are more expensive, right? So they won't make sense for everybody, and every distributor or supplier should choose the PPAI membership that's right for them. But this sort of data is, there's a lot of it out there that we're creating through the premium research section of our site. And I want people to see it, and I want people to make use of it so that they can benefit their business, they can benefit their employees. I think it's a great opportunity, and I want to see people take advantage of it.
All right. Well, everybody, you heard that. Go ahead and check out PPAI's premium research. Thanks again, Josh, for joining. Thanks, everybody, for listening in. Remember, you can catch this podcast anywhere that you stream podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio. Also, make sure to keep an eye out for the invite to the next live stream on September 25th, where we're going to be talking about how to break into the sports promo world. Thank you all for joining, and thanks, Josh, for coming in.
Hey, my pleasure, Gabe. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.